Welcome to Living in the Miracle Zone. This is the place to be if you want to live in the flow of synchronicities and miracles in your everyday life. I'm your host, Marcy Shimoff. I'm a #1 New York Times bestselling author, teacher in The Secret, and the creator of the worldwide program, Your Year of Miracles. And I have spent my life studying happiness and miracles. And in this podcast, we bring to you extraordinary miracle stories that will inspire you and also groundbreaking miracle tools that will show you how to live your most miraculous life. And it's my heartfelt intention that we have a fabulous time together. So welcome to the Miracle Zone. And today I'm joined by the wonderful and amazing Matt Kahn. Matt, welcome. I'm going to introduce you in just a minute, but I just want to welcome you here first.
Well, thanks for having me. It's such an honor to be here with you.
So great to have you here. So Matt is a renowned spiritual teacher. He is a highly acclaimed empath. He's a best-selling author. He's known for his transformative insights into the journey of awakening. And his teachings really focus on love as the ultimate path to self-realization. And I say yes to that. I mean, I'm a full believer in that. And he really emphasizes the importance of emotional freedom and self-awareness. And his books include the spiritual classics, Whatever Arises, love that. And his teachings have inspired millions. He's got a dedicated following worldwide. Matt's message is simple yet profound, which is to embrace every moment with love and kindness, to unveil the divine within. And he is a beloved figure in the world of contemporary spirituality. And I met Matt, I don't know when we met, probably 15 years ago. It was a long time ago. Yeah. And it was just, I felt like I met a kindred spirit and a soul brother. And we've really enjoyed getting to connect over the years on this journey. And I love where you are now. And I'm very excited about what's ahead for you. Matt, thank you. It's always fun when I get to hang out with you. So thank you for coming here so we can hang out together.
Thank you. What an honor. I mean, it's always fun to have these moments together and to know how much of the world we are touching, inspiring, and healing just by this moment of connection.
Yeah. So since this podcast is about living in the miracle zone, I'd love to just hear your experience about, I know there have been times when you weren't living as much in the miracle zone. And then when you are, what's your experience of living in the miracle zone?
I think the miracle zone, and there's so many ways we could really kind of touch upon this, right? If I think of my earlier years of my life where I was overthinking everything, anticipating heartbreak, loss, devastation, wanting positive things to happen to me, but actually more afraid of having positive things happen to me than even my desire, because then I had something to lose or something to slip away. And so I think, looking back at my life when I was really not quite fully aware of what you'd call the miracle zone, I think I was lost in a life of circumstance. And as I began going through awakenings, what I found to be true was that instead of living in a life of circumstance, I began living in a flow of synchronicity, where anything that happened to me, whether we could perceive it as a good thing, a bad thing, a high or a low, was always occurring by divine appointment, occurring by divine timing. And I started to see over my lifetime that everything was preparing me for something greater that would happen in my life. And so I started to see that even losses were gains, and that even experiences where I intended for some outcome to happen and it didn't happen that way, there's actually a gift in that to be received. And so as I started to live more in synchronicity than circumstance, I started to trust myself more. And of course, my own self-trust was equal to my full trust of divinity. And as I started to live in this synchronicity, this flow, the lows weren't as harsh. The highs actually weren't even as captivating. And I found that instead of a miracle for me being defined as the fulfillment of a super duper desire, I found everyday life. I found the breath I breathe, the fact when I open up a faucet and water flows out to actually be part of life's infinite miracles. And I started to see everything as miraculous and not just the things I was holding out for early in my life.
I so love that you said that, Matt. You know, Einstein has a famous quote that I'll paraphrase. It's there's only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle, and the other is as though everything is a miracle. And that is really living in the miracle zone. It's living with that. The circumstances don't dictate how we experience life. It's that we get that it is all miraculous and that life is here to support and serve us. And even though things on the outside might not look the way we think they should be looking, that life is always in our favor.
Right.
We are certainly on the same page with that. And I love that. And how do you think, what's one way that you think people can get there? You know, what's one way you got there?
I think back to when I was a young child. I had some, we all have really brilliant insights at very early ages that take most of our life to process. So I didn't understand what I'm about to share with you to the depth at which I teach it now. But when I was younger, let's say I was in middle school, and when I first discovered the social totem pole, and when I was discovering popularity and this type of thing in school, I actually became 6th grade, 7th grade, a mini politician. And I tried to control the narrative of how everyone perceived me. And I decided that if there is a level of popularity, I'm going to dominate it. And I made it my business to try to make sure everyone liked me. Of course, I'm an empath, so I'm perceiving their discomfort in their life as their opinion of me. So that was a misguided step. So I spend my life trying to control the narrative of how I'm perceived. I always fear no one likes me. I'm always wanting people to like me. And out of this exhaustion of trying to micromanage every aspect of your life, I began to spontaneously see, and again, I wouldn't realize the depth of this teaching till many years later, but I started to realize that how openly and honestly I showed up in any given interaction gave me more of a sense of validation in my body than what I was hoping to earn or that someone would give to me if I was a good boy or I did it right. So I began to see from a very early age, even though it took me my adult life to really process this, that instead of performing for approval from others, if I showed up openly in what I, as an adult, I would now say authentically, the authenticity of my contribution would be as and even more fulfilling in my body than what any level of validation another person could give me. And I started to see, after many years of this, that people show up in their process. And when we don't know this, we perceive their process as an interpretation of how we're being seen. And I started to be able to empathically hold space for other people's processes because I realized my side of the interaction was just how I chose to show up. And being honest and open and vulnerable felt so good and felt so aligned with what I worked so hard to try to beg, borrow, and steal from other people that I started to really learn that it really is just a matter of what I bring to the table, how I show up. And so to answer your question, one of the main ways I would say people can really get into the miracle zone is when we are not quite focused on what needs to happen, the outcome. This needs to happen. I need this person to do this in order for that. We can piece that together all day, but it distracts us from in every moment, how much of our authenticity can we bring forward? Who of us is ready to show up? How am I prepared to treat another person? And as we heal codependent patterns, how I treat another person through the law of one becomes my experience of both of us, and how they treat me becomes my view of their healing journey or their unprocessed pain. So I truly believe that one of the most unspoken or maybe underemphasized entry points into the miracle zone is how honorably we choose to show up no matter how anyone else can meet us.
Matt, that is profound and brilliant. And I have to say, if every teenager on the planet could get that it's not about controlling the world to like you. Right. If every adult could get that it's not about controlling the world to like you because people are showing up with whatever their stuff is and it's not personal, but that we show up deeply, authentically, that is freedom.
Absolutely.
That is freedom. And the question is, I can feel this in myself going, yeah, I have many, many moments of that. And then I have other moments where I think, oh no, I better control what they're going to think of me. Right. So how do you relax into that trusting that me being my deepest and most authentic self is actually safe and good enough?
It's a great question. And I think if we're going to get really raw about it, the pressure and exhaustion of holding it together, controlling the narrative, has to be more exhausting than your fear of what if, right? So the exhaustion of controlling the narrative, how tired it is to try to keep a story straight and make sure I'm being seen a certain way. That's what is. The what is has to be more exhausting than your fear of what if. And a lot of people will say, well, once I'm over this fear, then I'm going to step into it. But what we realize is that the ego, which is what's, the conditioned part of us, our personality is not the ego, but the ego is like the conditioned part of us. It actually lets go of us, but we don't heal the fear of being authentic and then become authentic. It's like fear or the ego is going to walk with us. And when being afraid does not prevent us from taking this step, or if you said to yourself, yes, I'm afraid of talking authentically to my partner, my co-parent, my parents, on social media, whatever it is. Yes, I'm afraid of this, but being afraid does not mean I shouldn't do this. It means that when I can do it while being afraid, then fear has nothing over me. And then fear is not actually something we're defeating. It's actually a very subtle teacher that says, if you can step forward with me, fear accompanying you, you've learned from me, and I no longer play a part in your life and it disappears. So instead of thinking we've defeated fear, we've actually completed the curriculum of what it teaches us. And we have to learn that when we're in fight or flight, we are run by a set of instincts that says, if it feels good, I lean in. If it doesn't feel bad, I pull back. But beyond fight or flight, there's a higher emotional intelligence of intuition that says, yes, this feels scary, but it's scary to the parts of myself that can't maintain limitation if I cross this threshold. So we don't always use, if it feels good, I say yes. If it feels, I say no. We always look at the context of it because you never want to put yourself in danger. But when you're feeling emotional threat from speaking your truth, it's because there's a part of you that you've identified with that will not make the journey. And when you can say, although I'm scared, I love myself enough to take this step anyway, that's when fear as your teacher says, namaste, you've passed the test. And we actually then find an excitement to be authentic. But in order to be excited by authenticity, we have to be willing to accept our fears and then step forward anyway.
I appreciate that it's not about getting rid of the fear and then doing it.
Yes.
It's about saying, yes, I see you're here. I get it. And I'm going to step forward anyway. Yes. And is there something that can help us be even more able to step forward? I mean, I find for myself, if I am pulled by the force of love, then it's an easier kind of thing to go, okay, the fear's here. I am going to make my allegiance
Right.
to a different energy. And my allegiance is going to be to that energy of love. And then it's more exciting. And so I'd love for you to comment on that. I mean, so much of your work is about that energy of love. So
here's the thing, and this is going to be a very interesting nuance to my teaching, because usually over the years I would say, well, of course, if you're afraid, you love the one who's afraid. I've taught that for many years, right? The fearful one is next in line to be loved. I love that one. And what happens is, what's interesting is that the fear response, let's call that a sympathetic response, right? And being in a state of connection as a parasympathetic response. But here's part of what I'm not this is part of what I think the nuance is. When you go into a parasympathetic response, which is people say from doing to being, or I was afraid, I was anxious, and now I'm feeling more loved and whole, we're less likely to take action from that energy. So a lot of times people will say, I'm going to love myself in preparation of doing this scary thing. They then love themselves and are so self-soothed that the parasympathetic energy is in a state of being versus prepared to take action, just like some people in sympathetic are so ready to take action, but they can only take action from conflict, competition, and that kind of unconscious masculine energy. So I think there's this interesting balance between, yes, if I'm afraid, let me love the part of myself that is asking for love. And as soon as I start to feel a shift out of anxiety and more into intention, then we move into the middle between sympathetic and parasympathetic, which is, now that I feel more soothed, what is an action step I'm going to take right now or today so I don't go from one extreme to the other? So I think it's self-love followed by intentional action, so we don't go from acting from a place of aggression to resting from a place of avoidance. But I love what needs to be loved in myself. And I'm not going to be so in the parasympathetic that I avoid the action steps that I'm taking.
What an interesting distinction that you have around that. And I really appreciate that. It's really about playing with the energies of action and inaction. And I think of the way I kind of feel into it, for me, is it's about the love of a vision.
Yes.
Of my vision. I wasn't even referring to the loving of the inner child that's in fear. Mine is actually referring to a love of the vision that I have of what's true.
Sure.
And the vision of, and from that I take action, inspired action, sure, which is fueled by the energy of love as well. So I think I think those two actually aren't, I think they're kind of very similar, just different words.
Absolutely. And I also think that, when we're in a state of fear, a fear response for anything, and there are people that feel fear about things that they weren't afraid of yesterday. And they go, why am I afraid of something I wasn't afraid of before? Right? I've walked outside my whole life. All of a sudden today I'm afraid of clouds. And it's that we're manifesting from the universe whatever gives us the feedback of what needs to be seen emotionally. So if your inner child, or if that part of your innocence or your emotional body, because really the inner child is the personality of your emotional body, if it needs more presence, more mindfulness, and if we haven't received that message, it's going to use any way to get our attention. So I think that it's important that any which way I feel about the outside world, I then take as an opportunity to connect within myself. Historically in this industry, there's been that mirror teaching where it's like, oh, what's happening outside of me is a mirror, what's inside of me. And that gets very codependent, because then people are around abusive people and thinking they abuse themselves. But really, the outside world is really just inviting us to say, okay, how am I responding to this? And which version of me is really begging for some love and some kindness that maybe it hadn't received before? And again, I think part of the nuance, and I love what you said about vision, is that we have an inner reality and an outer reality. And when we're in one state, we're all action and no awareness. And then people tend to be all awareness and no action. So I think in this modern day spiritual journey, it's really about kind of integrating into the center, where we learn to be as action oriented as we are rooted in consciousness and grounded, And I think something like self-love, as you said, the holding of a higher vision, go hand in hand to really help us accomplish that.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. So your whole work is around, you have a film that's just out called Healed by Love. And I'd like to just in general hear from you about the role that love has in living a miraculous life. Of course, we've been talking about it. And then, how is it that we can be healed by love?
Great question. I think the role that love plays is that love helps it to be safe to receive miracles in our life. That if we look at how the brain or even the nervous system registers phenomenon, it measures it by intensity. And so that means that if you have had negative intense experiences in your past, you're going to subconsciously also fear intensely positive experiences that you might even be driven towards. And so, which is why sometimes when people really want relationships and they meet someone that might be their partner, they feel anxious and all these different things happen because the nervous system measures everything by intensity. So if we're carrying the memory of negatively intense moments, we're equally not going to be in a very receptive relationship with intensely positive experiences. So when we love ourselves, when it's safe, because maybe from childhood, you always received attention from an authority figure or your parents, and they said they loved you, but they did abusive things. Or you wanted to earn someone's approval and you only got attention when you did something wrong. Whatever the feedback is, to first love ourselves is to say that it's safe for me to be the focus of attention. It's okay for me to be the focus of attention. It doesn't mean I did anything wrong, and it's not going to lead to punishment, even if I carry that memory from the past. And once it's okay to be the center of attention, even in your own mind, then what starts to happen is your nervous system starts to separate intensely abusive experiences from the past from intensely positive experiences that are always in the quantum field. And your nervous system, through free will, gives the universe permission to bring into your awareness the experiences that the universe needs to know aren't going to frighten and shut you down before they come into your life.
Oh, I couldn't agree with that more. What I've always said is that there are miracles all around us all the time. It's just we aren't open to receiving them because of that feeling of love. And so it's the ability to be able to open to receive all the good that is waiting there for us. And hallelujah to that. And so, by the way, Matt, I just have to comment. We had a great time when we got on today because we had a little mini miracle happen. I'm looking at Matt's plant. And for those of you who are just listening, I'll just describe it. He's got, in feng shui, it's called a money plant. I don't know if you know that, Matt. It's called a Zamia plant. It's a feng shui money plant. And you've got it in a very specific kind of a planter that's iridescent green and blue that I've only seen very rarely. And I have to point out that I have the exact same money plant in the exact same pot in my office. So there it is. We have matching money plants in exactly matching pots. I mean, I don't know the quite likelihood of that, but I would say, to have the same matching plant is one thing, to have the same pot is another thing, same to have both. That's pretty cosmically. Okay, we're aligned today here.
Our nervous systems felt safe enough to welcome that miracle.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Matt, I think what I'd love to end with is maybe you could tell us a little bit about the film Healed by Love, and what is it that we could each take away right now from our conversation today about how maybe today we can be healed more by love.
I love that question. The documentary we filmed, Healed by Love, isn't a documentary about healing. It's actually a documentary that heals you as you watch it. We filmed this documentary, my team and I, and we set out to capture, when I do dialogues and I work with people, there's a certain magic that unfolds in how the universe orchestrates that moment. And we thought it would be intriguing to capture it on film. And I have a team of incredible beings that are filmmakers that are just absolute geniuses at what they do. And we thought, wow, if we bring these two worlds together, because we all understand that entertainment can be an intentional platform to spread consciousness and healing around the world. So we went about filming this documentary, and with the intention, we kept everything open for what the universe wanted. And what we were able to capture on film and the movie that was put together by my beautiful team turned out to be so groundbreaking and incredible, and to be such an active catalyst of healing for everyone that watches it. We decided it needed to be a free offering that we wanted to offer to the world, because our deepest intention is that the world be healed and come together in peace and unity. And so as our gift to the world, as our love letter to awakening consciousness, we have this film, Healed by Love, that we would love to offer everyone viewing and listening to this podcast as a way of helping everyone step to the forefront. And I think in particular in this day and age, the intention is to heal in such a way that we each become leaders in our lives and new leaders of an awakened humanity, and not just followers of something else, but we each become leaders in our lives. And I think what we will take away from the Healed by Love documentary is more of a palpable sense of how each of us are uniquely connected to the divine, how those miracles are constantly unfolding in your life, and not just a greater hope that everything's going to work out, but to actually feel that you are the living space through which the universe works through. And so I believe this and so many more revelations to be the gift that people will receive as they watch the Healed by Love documentary.
Well, thank you so much for that. And we are, he's, as Matt just said, he's generously inviting all of us to watch this documentary for free. And we're going to add the link to our show notes, but it is Matt Kahn, MattKahn.org/love. So excellent. I always end with a quote from our fantastic guest. And so I'm going to, in a moment, end with a quote from you. But before I do, are there any last message that you want to leave us all with here today?
Yeah, I think that something very simple is that miracles, as you so eloquently always say, miracles are always occurring. We just have to become aware of it. And that every day, we don't have to try to do everything in one 24-hour cycle, that there's just a specific amount of movement and revelation and healing that happens every day. And if we actually allow ourselves to take time and move at the speed of love, as I always say, we can actually just allow the miracles to, instead of unfolding all at once, to unfold slowly but surely, like beautiful flowers blossoming in the garden.
Oh, gorgeous. Thank you for that. I have to say, Matt, you've been a healer since you were a young child.
Yeah.
And just getting to talk with you here today, I feel the energetic blessing of that. My whole nervous system feels so much more spacious, fluid, relaxed, joyful. I needed to hear the message that you left us with today in the beginning that you started with, about how to be our own authentic self and not to control the world is such a blessing, and helps us puts us in the miracle zone. So your wisdom has not just been heard today, but it's also been felt. And I appreciate that. I think that everybody listening will leave feeling a greater level of healing in their own lives. So you are a walking embodiment of healing by love, with love. And I will end today with a quote that says of Matt, who said, "In a world of endless questions, love is the only answer." And so thank you, Matt. And thank you all today for listening. I hope that you are feeling inspired and uplifted and more in the miracle zone after our yummy, delicious time together. And if you enjoyed this episode, we so appreciate your 5-star ratings and your reviews. And of course, share the Miracle Zone love with your friends and your family. And if you're ready to live more in the miracle zone, you can start by taking our free 2-minute quiz to find out what your miracle superpower is. You just go to quiz.youryearofmiracles.com. And remember that your life of miracles is waiting for you. It is your birthright. And may you live more each day in the miracle zone. Lots of love.